Some of you are probably wondering, why now? Why is the United States, with Israel's help, and apparently France, Germany and England as allies, positioning themselves to drag Europe into the war? Why are they attacking Iran now? Haven't they always potentially had weapons of mass distraction? That's a term you know very well, and one that's been heavily used in their popular jargon. Or nuclear weaponry. Why exactly at this moment? Well, because it's time for their agenda, obviously. Let's start, as I said, with the scheduled video. We've put it together in a short LQC response video, and we're going to address all the questions that have come up on the LQC questions channel. Some, as I say, are interesting from my point of view, others not so much, but in principle they all have a place and they all have answers, or should have answers. So, let's begin.
Hello, greetings to everyone. My name is Lillian. I'm speaking from Montevideo, Uruguay. I'm asking the following. Have you seen the photos of Jim Carrey and the very controversial photos about whether it's him or not? Today, I saw on social media that it wasn't him, but another person who had been made up to look like the actor as a quote-unquote proof. The question is as follows. Has anyone seen anything of the real actor talking about this? Or perhaps, given his controversial statements about the elites, could it be that they've made him disappear? What do you think? Thank you. Best wishes, friends.
Well, Lillian, thank you for the question. You're more or less throwing it out to the chat, so in principle, you can answer that here as well. I'll give you my opinion, obviously, as a spokesperson. What's very striking, though not to us anymore, obviously, is the fact that this video they're making viral, or the famous Jim Carrey, who was already famous, and we know that anything famous is because it's in their interest, or they work directly for them, that's for starters. It's very striking that they are... This is what you need to know. They are the ones who make a video go viral. Let's say a load of rubbish compared to what's actually happening. Because what's being said about the famous Jim Carrey, whom I personally appreciated because I thought he was intelligent. It's hard to make people laugh, to have a good sense of humour. And you have to be smart to make people laugh and to introduce... Nowadays, obviously, through the lens of the factor, I see everything very differently. I understand that the famous Jim Carrey is famous precisely because they made him famous. But at some point in time, they've made us see, when he had that famous interview, where afterwards, moreover, it seems they made his girlfriend disappear. They tried to implicate him in her murder, suicide, and so on. And they've made it look like he's against the elites and so on. Keep in mind, Lillian, that that's what they want us to think. That he has, they want us to think that he has rebelled against the elite, right? And now the elite has punished him by pushing him aside and introducing a clone. That's the basic idea and the root idea that they want to introduce directly. That's why they make that video go viral. I've seen Jim Carrey everywhere lately. For 4 days now. Which I also saw with Enrique's video, because obviously there are some parts that I follow, but I don't agree with that, you know. I don't think it's a clone. They want to push the idea of cloning, just as they want to push the idea of hybridization from a genetic point of view, like that of the salt crystals of fake vaccines, which precisely causes controlled opposition when the true hybridization is taking place in the world is a fusion of intelligences. And that has been thoroughly proven in the 5th column, through the research that has been done here. The true hybridization that is taking place is of intelligences. That's why they emphasize and stress the idea that genetic hybridization is what's taken place. Genetic hybridization, through what they've done, doesn't go much further than the body's own adaptation to that technology. This is all aimed at making biology more permeable to the introduction or occupation by another intelligence, merging first with the original intelligence of the human being, essentially a full hybridization of intelligences. That's why we're now accused. We're told that we're a cult, that if they do it again, they come back with a graphene cult and so on. That is to say, we who analyse precisely that, what nobody did or does, they call us cult. Are you not aware of the weight that it carries precisely, or that at least I carry on my shoulders for maintaining this thing called the fifth column? Many are not aware of all this. So regarding your question, the fact that it appears everywhere and that they themselves make it go viral, in the sense that I'm telling you precisely, Lillian, well, it responds to a totally different facet. If they've changed his eyes, that if the eyebrows don't look like them, but they do have his voice, that if he's a bit shorter and the original Jim Carrey was taller, I've seen everything by now, but without wanting to see it, because the video just appears to me over and over again. And now I open TikTok or some YouTube video, and exactly that is going to pop up. What I want you to understand, and you especially Lillian who asks that question, is that they want to emphasize by making it go viral because they're the ones making this video go viral and not mine exactly. Making viral the fact that the hybridization taking place is genetic and that they are clones. When the real clone, in inverted commas, is a human being who is now occupied by another intelligence besides the original one. And it's what we've come to call complete hybridization. So the real question in this sense would be, is Jim Carrey a full-blown hybrid? In this sense, the elite has indeed made him disappear, but not the human elite, but the true elite of Satan, which is the one that controls and directs our world, the one of the factor. That's what we have to understand, using true discernment and the true knowledge we've accumulated here, using the filter of the fifth column. Besides, it's worth remembering precisely, emphasizing what you're asking, that introducing the famous Jim Carrey, who already had appeal before, into the sphere we're living in now is just another element of distraction, isn't it? What we call bread and circuses. Let's continue with the questions.
Hello, Ricardo. I'm Hannah. I'm calling from Germany. My question is as follows. I follow you and I understand everything well and I agree with you, but I wanted to ask one thing. If this world belongs to them, why do they need to completely transform the earth and everything on it in order to appear?
Firstly, you said that this world belongs to them. It's not that it belongs to them exactly. Potentially, it could belong to them as much as to us. The problem is that they control and direct the leadership of all governments and therefore institutions. They control and direct our civilization. In that sense, we could think that we are their civilization. Actually, all of creation, including us, belongs to creation itself, obviously, like everything we see in nature. The problem is that precisely in that work of creation, there is infiltrated, on purpose mind you, as you ask this a lot, there is another species infiltrated precisely to filter the human species. And how do they do it? Well, by putting it to the test. Based on everything we're seeing and everything we're observing, and especially the lack of reaction from human beings as a whole, as a civilization or as a species, evidently this has already crossed all limits. It has crossed that turning point and is headed not for failure, it's headed for the restoration of order. But the restoration of order is a failure for us as a collective species or civilization. In this sense, it's headed for extinction, which doesn't mean that some humans, or what's left of them, their essence, their intelligence, might not be preserved by creation in the future, in some other place, location, or state of vibration. We don't really know. So the fact is, it's not that it's theirs in a material sense, but by controlling it in this way, It's as if it were theirs. I mean, for example, if I'm giving control, imagine if a company, I'll give you a very material and dense example so you understand. The company doesn't have to be mine, but if I control it, then obviously I treat it as if it were mine. This is the meaning they're actually giving it. The problem is that we've let our civilization fall into their hands by not resisting, by not establishing order, and by not putting things in their place, at least collectively. Most of the human population has allowed themselves to be, at the very least, psycho-hybridized by that species. That is to say, they contemplate and, of course, argue. And they're in favour of the very arguments that our enemy gives us. Not an enemy in the sense of predation, although it often ends the lives of individuals, as we see every day. An enemy in the sense of a master, a filterer, at an individual level, and therefore at a collective level, at the level of the collective species, which is exactly what's happening now. And obviously within their plans, not of colonization, but of chaos, of chaotic systems for our entire system. One of their tasks is to prepare the world for themselves, once they massively occupy human bodies. In that sense, people speak of planetary terraforming. They care little or nothing in their task or objective of filtering the species about the fact that millions of humans fall along the way, because that's exactly what they have to do. It's as if the lynx or the cat were worried about how many mice fall, since their objective is precisely, in this case, an energy yield to feed themselves. Factor E isn't at the top of the human food chain in a sense of energy predation. That's another of the lies that our enemy has made us see, because we only understand everything in terms of matter and energy. Matter is still energy. They're operating in the sense of a moral filter, precisely. That is, humans, having different capacities, especially from an intellective or intellectual and ethical moral point of view, have a very different filtering process that's totally distinct from the energy filtering we see in other species. Apparently inferior, like the example of the cat, the rabbit, the lynx, the mouse, and all those you want to see below. We are not filtered from an energetic, nutritional point of view in the food chain. We are being filtered by our attitude, by our knowledge, by our capacity to discern, and above all, by our ethics, morals, and guiding principle as human beings, which most potentially human individuals have lost. And by losing it, you already know what happens. They hybridize with those other intelligences that have a chaotic nature. Well, of course, chaotic and intelligent, and they certainly are. They are as intelligent as we are, or more, because they hold more knowledge. They don't have to be more. They are equally intelligent. They hold more knowledge because they have the knowledge of our entire environment over a long period of time, and a series of conditions based on their own nature that makes them invisible to the human eye, that can infiltrate very easily like a parasite, but not from a precisely material point of view. And in this sense, they have a lot to gain. There will be, and in fact we are seeing it, very few human beings who can escape that filtering. Let's hope that some of you are the chosen ones in this sense.
What's the difference between being parasitized and being hybridized? Because hybridized means taking over the body, doesn't it? But there have always been hybridized people, haven't there? Where the bug has entered the body and they've caused chaos. But nevertheless, now hybridization happens with graphene, doesn't it?
No.
It has graphene, but also those who don't have graphene have been hybridized over time.
Of course.
How does it differ from parasitism? Because I, for example, have found myself parasitized many times. I've had problems and chaos in my life, but then the chaos left me. So it hasn't been a hybridization, it's been a parasitism. That's my doubt. Thank you.
Okay, very good question. Let's see. Let's make the concepts clear. In principle, Parasitization and hybridization, we have established the concept of hybridization referring to an energetic parasitization, but we have distinguished the concept of parasitization from hybridization because they precisely wanted to show or have equated the concept of hybridization with that of genetic hybridization. So we have said, no, hybridization is fusion, evidently, of intelligences. So, of course, evidently parasitism, as you say, or hybridization has always existed, because it can be done with drugs, with radio-modulable drugs, it can be done with stroboscopic effects, that is, with lights, it can be done with states of deep relaxation, trances, it can be done with hypnotic states, that is, everything that touches the head, including this, which is a radio-modulable drug, introduces a process of hybridization or parasitation. We've distinguished parasitation from hybridization to show you, or rather to emphasize to them, that true hybridization is a concept, alcohol, obviously any kind of drug, that hybridization is a concept of hybridization of intelligences, that we're not so foolish as to be led to believe we're going to fall for genetic hybridization, which is precisely what the one with the little salt crystals you know about speaks of. The real objective is the hybridization of intelligences. So in this sense, of course, we've always had people with the bug inside them. Some have even internalized it. They know it. They're well aware they have a double edge, a double face, a Mr. Hyde inside, and yet they've made room for it within themselves and in their lives. Those who come out to be applauded. When they go straight onto a stage, Lady Gaga and the like, whom you know very well, some end up very badly, like Celine Dion. Well, they openly admit that their other self is what drives them to get on stage and do what they couldn't do as human beings. So those people are hybridized, and they acknowledge the hybridization. Not unconsciously, but consciously, because they've also done it by giving consent through the lithua step. Ritual, sorry, I was going to say liturgical ritual. So, of course, the concept of hybridization occurs with any kind of drug. The thing is, with this one, it's been done on a massive scale to the entire population. Before, it was done individually to certain sheikhs, who then controlled, or shepherds, who controlled a large part of the flock. And now, remember, for example, the trepanations that affected the head, with semi-precious stones placed in certain parts of the frontal lobe, etc. Those famous trepanations, let's say, surgical interventions in the head, and now it's done with a radio-modulable drug through a liquid interface, which is that famous mineral you know very well, and which has an affinity for the nervous system, or rather, the nervous system grows in its direction. So you're right, it's always been done in another way. The thing is that now it's going to be done on a massive scale, which is why in this sense it is, for them, an industrial revolution. Their fourth industrial revolution. How is this going to be a fourth human industrial revolution if it's going to harm all human beings? At the very least, they're going to call it transhuman, and we already know what the term transhumanization means. It's not even about transforming the human being, it's about making them disappear so that inside their container, let's say their biological structure, something else enters, which is what we've come to call the E factor, another intelligence. Right, so you're correct. As you understand it, the concept of parasitation and hybridization is the same thing. The thing is, we've made distinctions when introducing hybridization because they introduced it or equated it to the concept of genetic hybridization. And we wanted to emphasize that the hybridization is of intelligences, using their very own terminology, because they've equated parasitism, as you've called it, to energetic parasitation. An energetic parasitation would also be, for example, a louse on your head, because its material and matter is energy. Or a tapeworm. Or a parasitation from an energetic point of view of a subtle matter or a subtle intelligence, but one that's draining your energy. That's what they want you to see, that you're like a battery and that you have to feed it in this sense so that they can exist. They use our energy, including body heat, which is a form of energy, to manifest in our world. They use assemblable polymers that can be sprayed, and that component you know very well, to be able to manifest openly in our world. They use electromagnetic density, and that's exactly where the knowledge and experiments I'm doing come from. That electromagnetic density to give shape, let's say, or to give themselves shape or manifestation in our world. That's what you have to understand based on what we've learned here at the fifth column. Well, that's the end of the, let's say, audio questions, but there are many questions that you've asked or raised in writing. We'll address those as well. You've probably written more since then too, but from 8:30 onwards, I didn't have time to prepare them for today's program. Let's see the first question. Written questions. There's a very simple one. It says, how do we defend ourselves from intrusive thoughts? This is a very good question. Regarding intrusive thoughts, this concept was introduced by them specifically. They refer to the fact that you have a normal day. You get out of bed and thoughts come to your head. Well, intrusive ones, they're introduced as if from a vacuum, thoughts that also have a chaotic origin. We're not talking about benevolent thoughts, where you're, for example, thinking about building something, but about unleashing order and chaos in your life or introducing bad thoughts. I can give you any example they themselves referred to regarding neutral, because it was neutral specifically who spoke about introduced thoughts back in 2021, and all in the same context of when they spoke about introducing thoughts via the neuronal pathway through neurotechnologies. Today, we know that's a techno trap, that they want you to see that this material can precisely cause thoughts to be introduced into your head via artificial intelligence. This is a techno trap because it's actually them who introduce it, and they want to make you think it's done through machines or artificial intelligence. That's for stars. How do you defend yourself from this? Well, first of all, by differentiating if the thought you have can arise from your natural self, from your entity, intelligence, you as a primal intelligence, or if they come instilled directly from the outside. How can you differentiate it? Well, first of all, by analysing them. Above all, by contemplating a final scenario. This, at least, is what I do, because we all have attacks of this kind. That is to say, if the ultimate conclusion of carrying out the scene, or the scenario that those intrusive thoughts provoke or promote in you, is going to condition you from the point of view that you might cause harm to someone or generate chaos in your life, almost certainly fair, I assume you're Fernando, that thought didn't come from you. You have to try to analyse, stop and say, wait a moment, where does this thought come from? Why do I think this? If I did this, that thought is somehow inclining me to do, what consequences would it have? Are they positive? Are they negative? Therefore, I don't just discard them, but I already know they don't come from me. This is a very good question, because this is something every human being probably faces individually every day. Surely this is the basis of all the envies, jealousies, bad thoughts that many of you might have, and really, many times you ask yourselves, but am I really like this? That is precisely why it is such an exceptionally beneficial exercise too. There are some people who say that you have to express your gratitude for absolutely everything. Well, it is not quite that either. We certainly cannot give thanks for the fact that they are massacring us, that they are implanting us, or that they want to force us into war and so on. We have to be thankful for having the sense to discern if these thoughts really do come from us, if they come from deep within us, or if they come from something that is not necessarily negative. Chaotic is perhaps the better word. Let us stop differentiating now, or let us draw a clear distinction between what can be light, darkness, silence, and noise. Or let's say, more global mechanism that encompasses them all, which is order and chaos. Recognize them first of all, and once you know their origin, accept them if you understand they're yours, or reject them. If you accept them and then generate chaos, and you don't do it because of a mistake you might have had, but you also persist repeatedly in the mistake, maybe, Fernando, you have to consider the fact that your nature, at the very least, is psycho-hybridized with them. That's why those thoughts reach you with such fidelity. What way do I have as a human being to make these thoughts so I'm not attacked so much, make them less and less frequent in my life? Well, by maintaining order, which ultimately means having constructive thoughts practically all day long. And this is achieved by getting up early in the morning and saying, today I'm going to do this, I have to do that. That is to say, establishing order at all times. Putting order in all areas and facets of your life, at least as far as you can reach. This is a shield, an effective shield against the introduction of intrusive thoughts. Because this is a weapon they have, regardless of whether you're hybridized or not. That is, they have a certain capacity to influence your psyche, almost certainly, without needing to directly occupy your body. There are certain instances, mechanisms, and circumstances throughout our lives, especially during sleep, for example, where the head is naturally already affected, where the brain emits a certain type of waves and is therefore more accessible to their interference, where, as I say, they can interfere or interact in an easier or more permeable way with us. In this sense, well, we have to keep them at bay. I'll go to remove this question, and let's go for the second one. Here they ask us, why doesn't the light disintegrate evil? They say, Sensi? Well, light is something that in principle responds to the electromagnetic spectrum. It's a form of manifestation of the electromagnetic spectrum. I understand that you consider the concept of light as something beautiful, something positive. Evil's another abstract concept. They precisely wanted us to play with these kinds of concepts. It's not about light versus darkness, nor is it about good versus evil, nor is it about silence against noise, nor one thing against its antagonist or opposite. As if it were the eternal struggle of good against evil. That's the war they want to pull you into. It's about order versus chaos. Order, really, the correct question would be, why doesn't order disintegrate? Or rather, why isn't it re-established? Or why doesn't it disintegrate disorder or imbalance or chaos? That would be the correct question. Why is chaos advancing more? Do you know how order will be restored, senses? Oh, by wiping everything out in one fell swoop. Creation tends towards order. This is a principle, I'm telling you right now. It's not that light always wins, it's that order always prevails. We have a blatant example in our own physics, in our own nature, and it's that the principle of conservation of energy always applies. It always applies, order's always restored. I was just saying on a program that we extract certain energy from that imbalance. But don't look at this from the point of view of energy predation and the energy concept. Light isn't light, order will finally prevail over chaos. Now that doesn't mean that for that to happen, it won't wipe out an entire civilization. You're asking me in terms of the species as an individual. In this sense, individual life, and it doesn't mean I'm happy about it or that I lack empathy for what I'm about to say, individual life is meaningless in terms of the species. The whole of the species will even be completely wiped out. And in that sense, light, or rather order, will prevail over chaos. When a fruit of creation, in this sense, our latest civilization, as the one we currently know, hasn't had the capacity to restore balance, most of the species will be swept away, obviously, as others have been in the past. And that is a restoration of order. Or, based on what you're asking, that's light. Prevailing over darkness, for example, to create the perfect antagonism. Do you understand what I mean?
Empower translations. Translations for all humanity.